Wolcen Lords of Mayhem has just left early access in the last few weeks, and it has stirred up quite the publicity across the gaming world. Marketed as an action RPG, it sockets itself directly in between Path of Exile and Diablo, hoping to disrupt the two paragons of the ARPG genre. Having played through a good portion of Wolcen, I can tell you that I'm really enjoying the game, so much so that I don't see myself going back to Diablo 3 to complete another season in the near future. Diablo is a franchise that is near and dear to me as the first gaming franchise I really ever played, but Wolcen brings so many exciting, fresh, or at least interesting twists to the ARPG world that it has won me over for the long haul. In this video today, I'm going to hit the 9 big reasons that I'm quitting Diablo 3 for Wolcen Lords of Mayhem. These features are some of the ones that stood out to me or ones that I really enjoyed, so they're not in any particular order of importance. As a quick disclaimer to this video though, the rumors are true. There are absolutely some bugs present in Wolcen, but I can chalk it up to the same level of launch that Path of Exile had. We're talking about a small, independent company that completely changed their game halfway through development. Wolcen's original working title was Umbra, and the world, feel, UI, even the graphics have completely altered to create the Wolcen we see now. So with that, there are going to be some inherent bugs in the game, but nothing that, to me, is too game-breaking. But, you know, to each their own. Let's get started, though, on this list. The first entry on this list is the socket and/or jewel system for Wolcen. Now, this is very similar to something we've seen across Path of Exile, across Diablo, but it kind of takes on a little bit of a twist of its own. Now, if I take a look at some of my items, I can see it says Support 1 in blue. And if I look at this as Defensive 3 in green, and this says Offensive 1 in red. And you can have multiple sockets per item, just depending on the item. And when I correspond these to the gem, I can then see the benefits that I would get for not just the socket color, but also the socket level, 1, 2, and 3 respectively, as per whatever item it is. So for instance, if I'm taking a look at this hooked saber, I have Offensive 1. I can then drag the raw silverstone, which will add 9/9 sacred damage on attacks with this weapon. Dropping it in simply sockets it in place. But it goes even a step further. I can of course remove sockets just like you would any other time. You pay a small little nominal gold fee, remove the gem, all set. But you can also re-roll what sockets are on here. So if I click this and press re-roll item sockets, well, okay, I lost it right there. Do it again. Okay, well now it's Offensive 3. So you have a way to really kind of morph and change the sockets that are present on your items. If you have 2 sockets and you want them both to be Offensive 2, you can use this menu to really get down and granular with your socketed items. I like this because it just kind of takes you a step above doing the simple kind of diamond or skull or just kind of forcing you to do very specific or very kind of rudimentary socket combinations when you compare it to other games, again, like Diablo, where you're going to use primarily rubies on all of your chest and leg pieces. So this gives you a little bit more variety and allows you to really kind of tailor your entire character to the way you want to play. For instance, I mean, on my character, I'm focusing mainly on melee attack and crit. None of these gems have that present. I don't have any awesome, really high-level ones, but you can get those ones that do give you that. You get them in the support region. It'll give you 10% to crit. I think I've got one actually right here. So
soon enough.
This, the Alexandrite plus 10% attacks critical hit chance for support 1, and I'll socket those into both my belt and into my neck. Another system that really stands out in Wolcen is the active skills modifier system. Now this is very, again, similar to what we get with Diablo 3 and its individual rune systems as applied per skill. But this again takes a nice, better twist on things. You can really choose however many, I guess you want to call them runes or modifiers, are activated per one of your skills. You have a total amount of unassigned modifier points that increase as the individual skill level increases. So say if you've got just simply level 1, then I think I've got a level 1 right here with Wailing Arrows. Okay, this is level 6. I only have 1 point I can modify with, and I only have 2 nodes activated. The Wings of Ishmir here is activated down to level 27, so I get down to this portion of the modifier list, and I can really kind of tailor this as I want. Maybe your build focuses a lot on a specific type of damage or uses a lot of ailments, and I can use that here where it says converts base physical damage to sacred damage. Maybe that's my big focus, and I've got enough points to maybe drop in additional flight speed, reducing the cooldown for each enemy that is hit or killed, or rage generation. So I get a lot of really awesome benefits by doing this, and I can duplicate the skill to have multiple versions as befitting, say, a specific build or a very specific kind of niche I want to play. Also, this screen gets pretty granular too. I can filter it by warrior skills, all right here, ranger skills, or skills that require specific things. Like this says skill tags, attack, projectile, device, only usable with bows and pistols. But as we kind of look through more of these, I can see the mage abilities, any kind of magic spell casting, and then the rogue type abilities that require a daggers, skill tag, attack, rogue. And there's a difference between skill attacks, which are these three typically, or spells, which is this one. It'll give you an actual skill tag. It'll say a spell or a attack skill. For the most part, all the warrior ones say it's skill attack. But I think it's a really cool kind of way to play the game, because you pick and choose whatever skills you want at any time, and they simply level up for you. You can invest in actually leveling up by going over to Demetra here, and you can either use your special currency to level them up, or you can actually buy skills you maybe don't even have, like Bulwark of Dawn, Mark of Impurity, so on and so forth. So I think that what makes the skill system so great is that it is very customizable. It has a lot going for it, but it doesn't have this huge barrier of entry where I quite don't understand what I'm doing. You're supposed to kind of crash your way through the game as you get to the max level. That's how you learn. And I can see, though, with each and every one of these activations, what I'm actually turning on and how it's affecting the skill itself by the skill details panel on the right here. These same things. Okay, well, now I see that my projectile speed, actually it's not reflective in that, but cast to the location of the cursor. Again, I unfortunately chose two things that don't affect this, but if I click this ability here, I can see my rage cost is decreasing by 29. So I can see all the things that are stacking as I select all these items, which makes customizing my skills a little bit easier and a little bit more, I guess you could say, specific to my build, focusing on whatever I'm trying to get. I guess mainly in this case, I'm going to focus on ailment bleed stacks. Well, I'm going to want to increase my ability to actually trigger ailments, which I think is on here. Yeah, 40% status ailment chance score. That increases right there. Bleed chance, 8.9 up from 7%. So I think the skill system is very intuitive, but at the same time, very deep and complex. Going kind of hand in hand with the socketing and gem system is the overall inventory system. It is broken out from the typical kind of head, chest piece, legs, boots, arms, shoulders, weapon, and gloves to a little bit more granular. I now have to choose both gloves, both shoulder pieces. So I feel by doing this, you can actually kind of customize your inventory or your equipment a little bit better. There are 4 different distinctions of armor. From sorcerer to rogue to bruiser, then to heavy. And each one of them kind of relies on a different set of attributes to apply to you to help out in the way you want to either receive damage or mitigate it. Heavy will do all resistance, whereas when you take a look at something like a bruiser, it's going to have health and resistance. And then as you kind of take that step down towards rogue, you're going to be focusing mainly on just simply health. Let me actually get an actual rogue item up here for you guys. Rogue has got health with force field, and then when you take a look at strictly sorcerer, you're going to see nothing but force field on it. There it is, just 53 force field. So it allows you to kind of custom pick your inventory in a very cool way, because again, your inventory is going to be based off of how you're building your character, what kind of skills you're going to be selecting, and what kind of passives you're going to be selecting, which we'll go into in just a little bit. And your passives will then give you benefits to your resistances, to your force shields, which will then get benefits from your passive attributes that you've got over here. These are kind of customary that you would get from any other ARPG, so I haven't really gone into them as an intuitive portion of the game, but each one of these contributes to how your individual items always add to your overall build. And I like this because it gives you a lot of customization in not just simply choosing armor, but simply looking at the look of your character. You can really get down and dirty with this when we go into the cosmetic inventory a little bit later in this video. And since we just talked about it, let's bring up the Gate of Fates. Now, these are your passive skills that are present on whatever character you're trying to build. And this is, again, very indicative, or at least reminiscent, of what we get with Path of Exile. And it's very similar to other games like Grim Dawn, these large, huge maps of individual passive skills that might grant you active skills or abilities to completely change the way your character would play normally without them. So the interesting thing here is that you can actually rotate each one of these concentric circles. So I can do this, and I can rotate it to kind of create the path that I want my character to go down. So for instance, as you move them, you can see the lighting on these things. So this one's changed over here. It's no longer active, so you need to kind of make sure they're always connected. So I can see with my character, I've gone heavily into the soldier line, now down here into the warmonger line, and I've used this node to turn all of my damage that I deal to material damage. There's 3 types of damage. I believe it's material, occult, and elemental. And then there's 3 subdivisions of each one. So for instance, material is physical, rend, and another one. We'll take a look here. Physical, rend, and toxic. And elemental you can see is fire, frost, and lightning. Occult is the other one is sacred, shadow, and aether. But as you kind of progress your way through each one of these nodes, you can really customize, again, your character on a level that I've not really seen in a lot of other ARPGs. And you can stack up a lot of crazy things that you wouldn't otherwise. So I'm using the Exorcist line to go all the way down here to increase my material damage as much as possible. So 15% material damage from these nodes right here and here. And by doing this, I'm increasing the total amount of material damage bonuses that I'm getting from my Warmonger line, from this Exorcist line, and then further on, I go into my Child of Fury line, which is more centered around melee combat, to get this node. Your willpower generated is transferred into rage. And we'll talk about rage and willpower when we discuss the unique resource system, but I think this is a really cool system to allow you to make a character that is really the one you want to pull off or achieve. You've got stuff like your Kabbalist over here. You've got your Praetorian over here, which is more of a defensive, tanky style character. Siegebreaker was kind of like the flavor of the month until they recently patched one of these abilities that made it so that your block chance was added to your attack chance or something like that. Or multiplied your, damage is increased by 0.5 multiplied by your equipped shield's block chance. I believe that was a 50% multiplier, so it used to be just through the roof. So each one of these allows you to really kind of get creative with your character, and each one of them too also gives a direct nod to something in the lore, and that's something that is really cool about this game. Is a very expansive and cool lore. Like EOS is a really big portion of the lore that you'll come to understand as you play through the game. But I think the skill system is one of the biggest, or I'm sorry, the passive skill system is one of the strongest portions of Wolcen because you get so crazy customizable with your character. Now, arguably one of the most important systems in any ARPG is the combat system. Now, the combat system for Wolcen is very dynamic. It's very fluid. It has you moving around the battlefield in a very succinct and awesome kind of way. My character, as you can see, is definitely a frontline, almost barbarian-esque character. Right now, I'm using a unique two-handed axe, and it just kind of chops things apart. But you can play a rogue-style character. You can play a very heavily based sorcerer or casting-type character. And really you can mesh all 3 of these together to kind of get something that you really want to play with. As you can see, my character can roll around, and that is not just because of a special way that I specialized him. That is indicative of any character you play in Wolcen. You have a stamina bar. You can press spacebar and escape any real kind of sticky engagement. One of the things I never really enjoyed about Diablo 3 is requiring that you have one of your skills taken up with a movement ability to get in and out of really bad situations. The stamina bar really kind of replaces that and allows you to get in and out of, like I said, sticky situations. And you can specialize even heavier and heavier into that stamina bar, having more chances to kind of roll away and tuck and cover out of combat. And the nice thing too is that with the actual usage of your abilities, mine leap me into combat. I can use these huge sweeping AoEs to do a massive amount of damage, or I can be a rogue that just darts from unit to unit killing them, or again, a turret style mage character. So you have a lot of really cool things at your disposal with the combat system in Wolcen. And one final thing I want to bring up is the way that you kind of have this stamina bar on harder to kill enemies. It kind of reduces the amount of just slashing at a creature. You can break this stamina bar and actually get the point where they're vulnerable and weak, and you can do more damage to them. I think, again, this adds to the dynamicism of Wolcen's combat system. From the combat system, we also have the unique resource system for Wolcen. Now, I'm sure we're all very familiar with the 2 globes on the left and right side from Diablo fame of a health and or a unique resource and mana bar. This time around we have a willpower and a rage bar that pour back and forth into one another depending on this type of character you're playing. I am again a warrior and I'm using the Child of Fury ability that allows for my willpower to drain into my rage. I constantly have my rage replenishing. But you can be a character that is a bit of a dual class and using both at the same time. So this unique resource system really makes it so you have to kind of play the character a little more close to the chest. You can't just go slapping abilities. You have to have a good amount of resource management and again, getting the skills that allow you to use those resources as you see fit. Something we mentioned earlier is the cosmetic inventory. This is different, obviously, than your previous inventory. And this is a really strong portion of WOLCEN because it's very similar to a transmogrifier that you would get that has been prevalent in now a lot of RPGs and ARPGs as well as MMORPGs. But I like the fact that I can just do this anywhere in the world. I just press B and I bring up the cosmetic inventory panel and I can then swap out specific slots. Now this is not armor bound. If I swap out whatever armor I'm wearing on my chest, this is replacing the look of my chest piece for any time I have a weapon or an item in that place. So I can swap out according to the specific armor type. Maybe it's just a bare set of nipples, or I can go bruiser, I can go heavy, I can go sorcerer. I do love the color purple, so I've gone heavily with that. And you can do the same thing with your weapons, obviously, as you choose them as you see fit, and it will retain the effect of the weapon. So if you have, say, a high amount of fire damage, it'll continue to make or have flames on it, or lightning, so on and so forth. You're pretty much just selecting a different base model. So it kind of encourages you to loot even gray items when you reach a new area or a new level of the game, because those gray items appear as skins to then be modded on in your cosmetic inventory. Also, you have the ability to then dye the material or the item that you're using. And you find these dyes throughout the game as you're playing, through starter, common, uncommon, to rare colors. That's the last one. And you can choose some different choices for your dyes. So I can choose the individual cloth on the dye in this one. But if I switch over to a metallic piece of armor, or this is probably a really good example, I can switch out the color of the actual metal of the respective pieces that I'm looking at. So if I say go to the shoulder piece, I've got two layers of metal here, the rim and then the actual flat panel. Well, I want the flat panel to be blue, and we'll have the rim just go down to this color here. So you can really get pretty cool and granular with these, and again, it maintains on the character as a whole. So no matter if I'm swapping out individual items or if I'm swapping the overall look of my character, I could just put on a different skin or a different dye, press accept, and I'm done. I don't have to worry about some exorbitant cost of it sucking up some special resource that I wanted to use for something important in the game. This kind of makes you, it ensures that your character is kind of looking cool from the start all the way to the finish. I clearly have not reached the end game of this one, but I'm already pretty happy with how my character looks, and he's like level 20 something. So I really think the cosmetic inventory is not anything terribly original or over the top new, but I just like the execution of it a little bit better than I see in a lot of other ARPGs or MMOs, where I have to go to a specific hub to do my cosmetic inventory. I can't just do it on the fly if I pick up a piece that looks really cool. Or if I'm just like, I'm really bored of this look, I don't want to spend 3 hours in town doing it. It kind of adds a little urgency if you're doing it in the middle of a battlefield too. So you're like, oh, this, and this. I like it. Cool. Done. Let's get back to work. So I think the cosmetic inventory is a really strong bonus, especially the kind of gotta catch 'em all nature of the dyes and of the skins. So again, it encourages you to find these individual gray items you would have otherwise ignored in any other ARPG. One of our last systems I want to go into are the Ethereal Reagents. And this is very similar to what we get with a lot of other ARPGs, with an expansion upon their typical socket system. So taking a look here, we've got Ohm's Echo. And what this will do is it will remove a random magic effect and adds another one when used on an item. The catch is that it will consume all socketed gems to guarantee a new magic effect whose power depends on the gem's level. So for instance, in this case, I only have a tier 1 gem in there, so it's not going to give me a very strong magic effect. But conversely, if I were to use this tier 3 gem, it would give me a much higher magic effect. This is then graduated up to an entropy orb, which would reroll all magic effects when used on an item. So I've only unlocked these 2 ethereal reagents, but I know there are more in the game. And as you progress through, you can use these ethereal reagents to get a little bit more out of your magic items. This would kind of replace the enchanting system that we've seen with Diablo 3. And I like this because it's just kind of a fun way to always have it on the fly, and you always kind of have these stockpiled in a stash, which I would typically have in my personal chest right now. And you can just kind of use them as you see fit, use them when they make the most sense for you. And I think it comes back to catering your magic items to the way that makes, again, the most sense for your build. All this is really heavily dependent upon how you want to build out your character, which is very evident in games like Path of Exile. WOLCEN does a really good job of really allowing you to customize almost every little thing. I don't know if I've been able to beat that point to a pulp yet, but that's the heavy aspect of this game, is a lot of customization. Now, our last and probably the most important system of WOLCEN Lords of Mayhem are the aspects of the apocalypse. Now, each one of these kind of aligns with the primordials, which are the gods of WOLCEN. And you choose these, you can unlock them, and as you select them, they basically become an ultimate power-up that you can then use and enable to just delve out a ton of damage. It's a special kind of unique system that separates WOLCEN from any other ARPG. It's like that one thing. It's like its prime unique selling point. So I have chosen the aspect of war, which turns me into a gigantic demon, or if you're familiar with Warhammer, I basically turn into a bloodthirster with an axe. And these abilities, which we're going to show off here, allow you to kind of wind up your attacks, or blow things up from range, or do all sorts of really crazy ways to just reap through your enemies. And as you kind of progress through the game, you'll unlock more of these points to choose different aspects. So you're not just locked into one throughout your entire playthrough. In fact, when you do unlock them, you can then select whichever one you want. You don't have to start with Aspect of Dawn, which is the one that the game teases you with at the very beginning. So as you play through WOLCEN Lords of Mayhem, you'll unlock more of these aspects of Apocalypse, which will then change how you play or how you use your aspect mode as best as possible. Hopefully this quick list of things that I really enjoy out of WOLCEN helps you to kind of get a better idea of how the game is, or what it actually is like. I know that there are a lot of issues with some of the bugs that have come up. In the past, there was a big issue with the online playability of the game, and that has since been fixed as of the publishing of this video. But do expect a lot of those bugs to get fixed in times that are coming up ahead. I mean, again, this is the first kind of actual launch of the game, even though it's been in a beta that has changed itself multiple times for like 3, 4, 5 years, something like that. But again, guys, I really am enjoying WOLCEN Lords of Mayhem, and hopefully you guys will get a really good enjoyment out of this game as well. If you're into ARPGs, Diablo, Grim Dawn, Path of Exile, then this is probably the next game in the series of ARPGs to really pick up. But again, as always, thank you so much for watching here today. Have a good one. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment below, and take care.